This here is an affordable entry-level Canadian rye from a family with deep brewing roots. And I want to be clear about what it is before we talk about what it isn't. Sleeman beer was, in my eyes, never about being fancy. It was about being for the people, approachable, honest, easy to live with. And this rye feels like it comes from the exact same place. Today, I have the John Sleeman Sons Rye Whisky from the Mill Distillery. This just picked up a bronze at the 2026 Canadian Whisky Awards. And I think it's an entry-level Canadian rye at a price point that actually makes sense. This is my first time reviewing Mill, so before we even taste what's in the glass, I want to talk about who made it. Because that's where this bottle, for many, really earns its place. If the name Sleeman sounds familiar, it should. The Sleeman family is one of the most recognizable names in Canadian brewing history. Generations tied to the Sleeman Brewery, and a legacy built on grain, fermentation, and making beer for everyday Canadians. Their roots run deep, 3 generations deep. And the Mill Distillery here isn't a branding exercise. It's a continuation. This is what happens when a brewing family decides to step into whiskey while applying a brewer's mindset to Canadian spirits. For me, that is grain forward, accessible, and unpretentious. They're not positioning themselves as boutique or precious. They're making whiskey people can actually afford. Ryes, single malts, cask finishes, and more. And this rye, I think, is the front door. And while their approach is affordable whiskey, they don't cut corners. They run 2 copper pot and column stills from Forsyths, made in Scotland. Yes, Forsyths, the same brand used by Glenlivet, Macallan, Glenmorangie, the Balvenie, and more. And their washbacks are handmade in Scotland as well by a father and son team using the one and only Canadian Douglas fir. But this here is an entry-level Canadian rye. It's affordable. In Alberta, I've seen this for under $40. In Ontario, I think you're looking at closer to $45. So it's not trying to be fancy, but it still might surprise you. They age in a combination of ex-bourbon, sourced mostly from Kentucky, with barrels ranging from Heaven Hill to Jim Beam. But here's where it gets really fun. This rye includes whiskey made from new Canadian oak barrels, made in-house by Quinn Sleeman himself, their own distillery cooper. Quinn crafts his barrels the old-fashioned way, a little slower, a little more love, and uniquely their own. So let's get into it. We're looking at 40% here. So let's give it a nose. Okay. Definitely sweet and soft. I see on the back, it does say it includes corn whiskey in American white oak, rye whiskey in American white oak, and rye whiskey in Canadian white oak. Definitely a robust grain, sort of a rye spice and a little bit of citrus. Yeah. There's nothing coy, nothing hidden, but quite soft. Yeah. Definitely something sort of bourbon-esque in there. Again, maybe it's that blend of that corn whiskey and their new American white oak, sort of giving it that softness and sweetness, sort of a little bourbon in there. All right, cheers. Okay, so on the palate, it stays honest. Just a little bit of spice, but quite soft for a rye, fairly lean, not too much weight, a little thin on the palate, not oily. For me, it's definitely a grain forward rye. Bread dough? Yeah, like a bread dough, bran. There's a little bit of brightness in there. Maybe like a bitter orange? I'm not getting those classic rye sort of dill or spices, maybe a little bit of spice on the back end, like a white peppercorn. It definitely finishes soft. The subtlest rye spice, but really soft. If I recall, Spring Mill calls it creme brulee in their tasting notes. I'm not getting that, and that's okay. I'd rather whiskey be direct than poetic sometimes. For me, here's the trade-off with this bottle. You might be giving up a little bit of polish and a little bit of nuance. In exchange, you get price, heritage, and a very clear expression of Canadian rye with all the sharp edges. This isn't a whiskey trying to impress the judges, though they did pick up an award, like I mentioned before. Sleeman beer was always made for people, not prestige. This rye carries the same philosophy into whiskey. It's a whiskey trying to stay on Canadian tables. I've had Spring Mill before too. Their maple brulee whiskey was a little spicy for me, a little bit of heat, but it was cask strength. It had a fantastic nose. It was sweet, aromatic, and honestly really fun. That bottle lived on my table over Christmas alongside my mom's Christmas pudding. Shared, casual, nothing precious. We enjoyed it. And that's where I think Spring Mill works best. Whiskey as part of life, not a performance. I keep hearing very good things also about their PX aged rye. If you've tried that, let me know down below. I'd love to know. And their wine cask aged single malts. Are they worth picking up? Let me know. This rye isn't at the ceiling of what Spring Mill can do, it's the baseline. It shows you where they start, not where they finish. So if you are a neat only single malt aficionado, maybe pass on this one. If you're okay with a rye and coke, a cocktail whiskey, or looking for something straight and honest after a long day of work at a great price, this will do the trick. And unlike the Sleeman Brewery these days, this whiskey is still Canadian owned. John Sleeman and Sons Rye isn't trying to win awards, even though they have. It's trying to represent a Canadian brewing family stepping into whiskey at a price that keeps the category open, not exclusive. So, to the Sleeman family, cheers to that.